Hey everyone, today we are going to be making these vinyl triangle pouches. This one uses rivets to secure the D-ring. It has a zipper that goes up into a curve around the top with no zipper tab, and it is made from one single piece of vinyl for the main part. Obviously you still need an extra piece for your optional wrist strap and to secure your D-ring. But for the main part, you just need your piece of vinyl, a piece of zipper by the yard, and one pull. The video that I made a couple of years ago for a turned triangle pouch is one of the most viewed videos that I have, one of my very first ones, which is this style of triangle pouch. So if you are not confident sewing with clear vinyl, if you don't like this style of zipper tape, then you can go and look up this tutorial that I made. It is one of my older videos, so I cannot vouch for how well it has held up over time, but that is one of my most watched videos that just runs you through how to make it with the turned lining on the inside there. I did play around with a different method of constructing the clear vinyl one that uses one piece of vinyl that does a zipper a slightly different way. If you can see here, it is turned 90 degrees in, and I just didn't love it. I don't love the seam here at the top being visible, and it just isn't as neat. So it can be done with a similar method to this one, but I really like the clean lines of this particular version. So that's the one that I'm going to be doing today. That being said, for this version, you need to rivet on your D-ring because there's no seam here to sew the connector into like you could if you did this version here. So if you don't have a rivet setter, it's not something that you do, then you may be better off following the previous version and adapting it as needed for clear vinyl. So we are going to work on this one today. And let's get started. Things that you will need for our project today is your vinyl. I'm using clear PVC vinyl from Geek Garden. You can use regular faux leather vinyl. It just won't be quite as structured depending on the thickness of your vinyl. But because we're doing a single piece, material that is non-fray is the way to go because there will be a couple of exposed seams. You will need your ruler to cut, zipper by the yard. I am using size 3 zipper by the yard. You can use size 5. You only need one side. So your zipper tape, cut to 12 inches and then pull it apart and just use one side. So you can make 2 of these at a time if you like, so that you're using up the other side of your zipper by the yard, or pop it away for a future project. I'll just show you this again as it was hard to see in the introduction. The zipper curves around at the top here of the bag. So that is why you only need the one piece, because it will be folded over in the bag like that. This is the other side of this one, which is why it is already separated. Just the one zipper pull, something to melt your threads if you like to finish your seams that way. 3 pairs or sets of rivets, and then your swivel hook and your D-ring rather, if you are going to put on a wrist strap. So let's get started with the cutting. Grab your vinyl, your ruler, and your rotary cutter, and scissors if you need them too. The first piece we're going to cut is the wrist strap piece. That may vary based on how your vinyl is. Because that piece is longer than the exterior of the bag, I like to cut that piece first, since it can be right up against the edge, so that if I was cutting it this way, for example, it's not being cut into the main piece of the vinyl. The piece that you want to cut is 3/4 of an inch. If you are using 3/4 inch hardware, if you're using 1/2 inch, you're going to want to make it 1/2 inch wide. If you're using 1 inch, then 1 inch wide. I'm using 3/4 of an inch, so mine's 3/4 of an inch, and I want it to be by 13 inches. Making sure when you're cutting your vinyl that you cut the print, and then we can cut off this clear piece on the selvage afterwards. Snip in at the corner so that you're not nicking the main part of your vinyl that is left. I'll pop that there for a moment. Then we want a piece that is 6 inches. Oh, that's perfect. 6 inches by 11.5. The same thing, I like to do a little snip at the corner so that the main piece of my vinyl doesn't have a little cut out of it, because I don't know what I'm going to make with the rest of this. We'll neaten that up again in a moment. And then for your D-ring attachment, you need a piece that is 2 inches by 3/4 of an inch, or if you're using different size hardware, whatever the interior diameter of your D-ring is. Move that out of the way. Now I like to go back and just double check my measurements and straighten up any lines, since this is all going to be exposed at the sides. This one, because it had the bit of plastic selvage on it, I'm going to trim that down on both sides. The wrist strap length is up to whatever your personal preference is, up to you, how long you want to do it. It depends on the size of your hand. I like to use anywhere from 12 to 14 inches long for mine. And then the same little piece of clear at the end there. Just slice that off. Move these out of the way. And then just check the measurements on this main piece. You want it to be 6 inches by 11.5. And that is our cutting done. Our next step is to put our zipper tape on. I have 12 inches of size 3 zipper by the yard here, just one side of the tape. Also put a piece of double-sided tape on the long end, on the long edge of my piece of vinyl. My print is non-directional, so it doesn't matter. Keep in mind that when the bag is finished, it's going to be like this. That's going to be the rough shape of it. This is going to be the piece sitting up, so you can see how that works here. So if you have a directional print, keep that in mind. This print is non-directional, so it's good any way that I choose to do it. I'm going to grab a couple of washers that I use as pattern weights to keep that vinyl in place. To center this zipper tape on this piece of vinyl, you can clip the centers and do it that way. Another way to do it is to line it up on your mat. I have my piece of vinyl that is 11.5 inches centered in the middle of a 12-inch section of my mat. That is the approximate length of my zipper tape here. I'm going to peel off my double-sided tape. If you don't like to work with double-sided tape, or you don't have any, you can use clips for this part. If you're going to use clips, I think probably marking the centers with either a marker or with clipping is going to make this a little bit easier. I place my tape on the top, make sure it's centered up, and then I'm just going to put it right side together. So that means teeth down here with the edge of the zipper tape lining up with the edge of my piece of vinyl, and I'm just going to smooth it down, pressing it onto the double-sided tape. And that should keep the lengths at either end of the zipper as close to even as possible. We'll slide that down there. The next step is to head over to our sewing machine and sew the zipper tape here, and then we're going to fold it, finger press, and top stitch that down. When I'm sewing with clear vinyl, I like to use a slightly longer stitch length. I recommend, if you haven't worked with clear vinyl, taking some scraps and getting to know how your machine reacts to it. Some machines need very little adjustment, some need a lot of adjustment. I use a domestic Juki machine, and I don't have to do too much tweaking, except for occasionally I need to increase my tension. So play around with your machine so that you get to know any alternatives that you need to input so that you get the best stitches. I am going to be sewing this zipper with a 5/16 of an inch seam allowance, which I know is extremely specific. The reason that I use that is that is the width of my zipper foot. If I line the edge of my zipper foot up with the edge of the zipper tape, then I get a nice uniform seam line. So you can use 1/4 of an inch, you can use 3/8, whatever you are comfortable with. That is the seam allowance that I almost always use for my zippers. It's more about the width of the zipper foot and how that lets me achieve a straight seam line than it is about the specific number. As long as you're consistent, then you won't have any problems with this pattern. What I'm now going to do is fold this over. If you're using clear vinyl, like this PVC, you may find it's kind of stiff. So you have to be pretty forceful when you're folding it over. You can also seam roll it. If you need a little bit more malleability in your vinyl, you can heat it up with a hairdryer so that it is easier to manipulate it. I just use a little bit of brute strength. So that is folded over. We're now going to top stitch along here. I'm going to switch out to my Teflon foot so it will coat better with the stickiness of the clear vinyl. And I also like to use my edge of my zipper foot here as a guide. Switching to a longer stitch length. Again, the specifics of the numbers will depend on your machine. I use a 4. I find a 5 is too long. A 4 seems to work well for my machine. So I hand crank the first stitch or two. Then I'm going to back stitch, and I'm just going to sew along this entire edge here, making sure to tuck that underneath as I go, as the vinyl wants to fold back out flat because it is a little thicker and stiffer. So I'm going to sew along here, as I said, using the edge of my zipper foot, sorry, my Teflon foot as a guide. I like to use the inside edge here, just along the folded edge of the fabric to get a nice consistent line. Now that our zipper is installed and our top stitching is done, we're going to tidy up these threads here at the end, keeping in mind that this bottom seam is going to be exposed. So I am going to use my thread zapper to melt those. You can do it however you prefer. It's now time to put on the zipper pull. To get the edges lined up nicely, fold the pouch in half and line up the edge of your pouch. I grab a couple of clips to keep that in place. And then I like to take a good look at the end of my zipper. if you match up where your seam is folded, you can see where the edge should be. What may happen is that your zipper tape has the teeth that are a little further out on one side. That's okay. That's you. It's more important to have this seam line up than to have this even here, since we're going to clip that anyway. I'm going to pop another clip on there, and then I'm going to slide on my zipper pull to make sure that it's going on nicely. I'm just going to line up the teeth as best I can, and then I'm going to clip off the last one there so that it should go together evenly. I'm going to take that clip off there. I'm going to just snip one tooth off the top. And then I'm going to be starting from this side, the slightly longer side. And pop that pull on. Can be a little fiddly just trying to get it on the right way. I like to keep my eye on the side of the zipper that I want to be the outermost side, the tooth that is closest to the top. Keep my eye on that one. Slide my other side in and just pull it down slightly till they're very close to each other, and then slide the pull on. But I can see there that it's caught on the wrong side, so now I'm going to pull that back and then try again until I am happy with the position. And that is right there. So I will just pull that all the way on, and that looks good. I just wanted to show this one more time where you can see it a little bit clearer. Got the edges lined up here, and then I look at my zipper tape and see which tooth sticks out further when the edge here is lined up. So looking at the tape here, I can see that this side here is the one that sticks out further. So this is the side that I'm going to put at the top when I'm inserting my pull. So I can take the clips off and it's a little bit easier to maneuver. So take my zipper pull and I slide it on so that the tape is almost at the top there. Then I like to pinch it close to the pull so that I'm pushing that out a little bit further. Whoops, that was a little too far. So just try that again. Maybe not pushing it so hard. Just pinching it there so it's holding it in place and it's keeping that bit of that side of the zipper tape over to the side. Then grab your other piece here, slide that in, and then I like to slide this side down to meet it, and then push on the end of the pull to just slide it on. Just push, push, push. If I can push it with my index finger, then I can hold the tape in place. And then, oops, popped off again, a little bit fiddly. Sliding it on, slide, and then push, 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 push. And all this fraying here, that is why I like to have the tape a little bit longer than it needs to be, so that it can be, whoops, okay, so you can see here, let me show you, this happens often. The teeth are not lined up where I want them to be. There's an extra tooth on this side, which if you're just gonna trim here, maybe it doesn't matter, but the problem is that at this end, when you slide it up, it's not going to meet properly in the middle. It's going to be a little bit off. So I try to match them up perfectly. When you're doing a continuous tape that's going to be clipped on either end, it's not as important, but with the curved zipper, it is going to matter. So we're going to take that off again, and then same way, holding that on one side, the longer side, starting with the longer side, then slide it down till they meet push with my index finger. Gosh, I might have to melt the ends. It's just becoming so frayed. Slide, slide, slide. Let's go, let's go. All right, now I can, sometimes you gotta pinch here and then slide it that way. Oh, I think we got it. Okay, and then if you look here, let's get that to focus here. Okay, you can see that there's now just one tooth further out. And you can slide that all the way in. And then you are going to be ready. So if you look here, you can see that it's lined up at the end here. And then this is going to get snipped and melted further on so that it will be nice and neat. That is how I get my pulls on. Just wanted to show you again where it's a little bit closer because the last video you could hear me talking, but you couldn't really see me doing it. Okay, let's continue on. Before we go any further, I'm going to pull this zipper pull all the way up to the top to make sure that I am happy with how it looks at the top there. You can put your pull on with the bag right side out so that you can really see that you're happy with the way that your zipper looks. Because the next step that we're going to be doing needs the bag this way. I've kept mine inside out. But if you look at the top here, you can see that it has a nice curve there and there's no big bulges on either side. So that will be good when we get it flipped back around. I'm going to unzip that slightly as that's going to be easier to turn it when we get back to Before we sew the next seam, make sure that your zipper is at least slightly opened, as that will make it easier to turn it, as they're sometimes tricky to open the zippers from the back. The first seam that we're going to sew now is this bottom seam here. So lining that up, grab a couple of clips, and we're going to head over to the machine. And we are going to sew along this bottom seam and then come back to reinforce it back the other way. Because we are sewing along this bottom edge to a folded seam here, to a folded edge at the end, I'm going to start at the open edge so that I can line up the sides of my fabric as neatly as possible. And this end is more forgiving because there's no join there. I'm going to start here, sew all the way down, and then I'm going to sew back so that it's a two-layered seam. Because I'm sewing with the clear vinyl, I'm going to keep my Teflon foot on, and I'm going to be using a seam allowance of 3/8 of an inch. Secure these threads, I'm going to tie a knot and then tuck them back in between the stitch line here so that it's secure but still fairly neat looking, because this is going to be an exposed seam. The next step is to create the triangle shape and sew the final seam. To do that, we need to manipulate this, what is square, into a triangular prism. So I like to open that up, making sure again that your zipper is at least partially open. You're going to be lining up the center of your zipper tape with this seam here. I like to fold that bottom seam open a little, just part of the way. You can leave it together there, and then line those two up so that your stitch line joining that bottom seam lines up with the middle of your zipper tape. Grab a clip, pop that on, pop that on. This lining up is the most important part. Then pressing the corner here, try to line up this edge of your opening. Pop another clip and another clip, and then on the other side, pressing that down slightly, Grab a couple more clips and pop them on. It's fairly stiff, so you have to be pretty forceful when you're working with this PVC type of vinyl. As you can see here, it just wants to fold back in on itself. So just try to keep that as flat as you can. We're going to sew along the bottom here. I like to start my stitches in the middle, and then I can tuck the ends of the threads underneath the zipper tape. It's hard to thread your excess thread through the PVC. It's so stiff. I've stabbed myself a couple of times trying to do that. So I like to start it here. I'm going to sew across the end of the zipper, go all the way to the end, come back, go to this end, and then come back again, finishing up in the middle where I can finish my threads and tuck them in so that they're a little bit neater. So let's go ahead and do that. Just make sure that your seam here is staying open. It's actually probably easier to sew it with that seam up so that if necessary, you can fold it down. You could also pop a staple in there to help it stay in place. Then I'm going to pull my threads through and knot them and then tuck them into the zipper tape so that they are secured. Then we're going to head back over to the table and clip and melt the end of this zipper tape so that it doesn't fray. The next step is turning this pouch out the correct way. With the PVC vinyl, it's pretty tricky, honestly, to turn it. Before we do so that we can get nice, neat corners, I'm just going to snip a little bit here into the corner near where the seam is, just so that when we poke it pokes out a little more neatly. Making sure not to cut into your seam. You just want to cut on a bit of an angle here so that when this seam is inside of the pouch, it's not adding to the bulk in the corner. So you'll have 3 corners to just do a little clip off, and then we're going to turn it. Heat is your friend. This, I'm not sure how easy it is to tell in this video. This does not want to turn. So I have got my hairdryer here. I'm going to aim the hairdryer at the bag for a bit, and that's going to soften it up, and then it's going to be a lot easier to get it to turn. As you can see, it's just very, very stiff. So you can try, but if you want to make your life easier, grab a heat gun, grab your hairdryer, and it will be much more pliable so that you'll be able to turn. You could, if you wanted to, call this good here and say, that's it, I'm finished. It's a super cute little triangular prism. I like to add a D-ring and a wristlet strap, so we're going to do that real quick. There's no more sewing. I use rivets to do this part. So you need your wrist strap piece and your D-ring piece. To make it look a little fancier, I like to put a little snip in one end of the wristlet strap. I just fold it in half and do a little 1/8 of an inch triangle snip off the end there. And I like to do the same thing on the D-ring connector. Fold it in half and snip. And then to match up the other sides, turn it over and snip there and there. Now we need to grab our swivel hook and our D-ring, as well as the rivets and whatever you use to punch your holes for your rivets as well. Grab your swivel hook, slide it on here, leaving about 3/4 of an inch at the end there. Fold your wrist strap piece over to butt up near your swivel hook and fold it in half. Oh, that vinyl actually needs to go the other way around. This has a glossy side and a matte side, so I want it to be glossy side out. So let me just show you that again. Going to fold that over there, pump that there, tuck it in, keep that secure there. Now I like to grab 2 clips so that I can see the center and just pop it on either side of that overlapping bit there. Let me just zoom in a little bit for you so you can see that. I'm going to punch a hole for my rivet right here, and then I'm going to put a single rivet in there. So we'll pop that over there. For the D-ring, I like to open this up, fold it in half, take the piece here and fold it over approximately where I want it to be. Thread on the D-ring, place it again. Because it's the transparent vinyl, you can see through to the other side to make sure that it's lined up and that you're happy with your position. Then I like to grab a clip again to just hold that in place. Then I'm going to grab my punch. I'm going to punch right through 4 layers. Going to try to line it up in the middle as best I can. You can measure if you want to. I often just eyeball these kinds of things. Line it up, punch. So that has gone all the way through. Take the clip off, open that back out, then grab 1 rivet for each side, pop it through, going to pop that there, other side here, into the hole, clip that on. Okay, that's not set yet, obviously. The hole in the wristlet strap, same thing. You can measure or you can just eyeball it for the center. Punching through 3 layers for that one. Pop your rivet in, through there, through there. Then I'm just going to go over to my press and set those rivets real quick, and then I'll show you how it looks when it's done. Those rivets are set now. Because of the way that the zipper is done here, you can open it up really nice and wide so you can get in there to set those rivets. Then zip it up. And you have your swivel hook wrist strap. And then it is complete. And there you have your triangle pouch from one single piece of clear vinyl. You're good to go. Thanks, everyone.